I'm telling you. How about healthcare as a right? You talk about values. See, that was one of the things that you go to Canada now, and that's sort of their stated comment, is that it's a right. And that's really where we've kind of gotten to. I'll go fast through this one so that we can get to the next slide, and then I really want to hear what Jessica has, and then we'll open up to some conversation at the end. But you guys kind of get the idea here. People say, you know, this is big money. Like when a person goes in and a surgery is $60,000. Right. Anyhow, don't get me down on that soapbox or we'll be up here all morning and afternoon. You know, the Hippocratic Oath does hint that it's a right. So people run with that. It's a little different in healthcare than in any other industry we deal with. There isn't a Hippocratic Oath in the monetary funds. You know, they don't want to see people hurting, you know? And that is some of the stories they hear, is hurting people in their community who didn't have care, who couldn't get care. They don't want to see that. So it's where they're coming from. What should we say? Do you want a right for people to actually just get insurance, or do you want to have a right that everybody gets paid for care? And in Canada, what they learned 20 years ago was you can have unlimited supply and unlimited demand, but after a couple decades in the healthcare system, in the great trends of the 70s and 80s in healthcare, they figured out real quickly, oh, we don't have an unlimited supply. So they started increasing their wait times. What other right in America is a right that actually gets paid for? Life, liberty, pursuit of happiness. And everybody has a right to a home. Everybody has a right to a Lexus. Do people have a right to a car? Do they have a? We have a right to bear arms, but we have a right to bear arms, but we're not issued one, right? Like, you know, okay, here's your cost.
Maybe education.
Education. We have a right to education. You're right. Thank you. Nobody's ever said that. You already have a Starbucks.
And I'm still listening.
And it is that conversation about people largely affect the costs and the results of their own health care. And coming from the Canadian viewpoint to America, it won't be long before dealing with the cost issue is going to force the government to start saying, you know what? You need to be on a wellness program. You need to lose some weight. It's going to be illegal for you to smoke in this area and smoke in that area, and we're going to tax you more, because it's going to become their issue to start changing the way that our health actually plays out. And all people already get care here in America anyways, right? Because of the Hippocratic Oath. But here's what I wanted to come to. This conversation over who owns health care. It's a big industry, right? We talk about it as an industry. Who owns it? Who's responsible for the American healthcare system? It's 1/6 of the economy, which means it's 1/6 of the employees in the entire country. It's a lot of people. If you were to ask who owns it, you know, some of the first ones would be, well, okay, well, it's the hospitals, doctors, maybe the nurses, it's the surgical centers, blood clinics, the DME, medical information systems, ancillary, medical schools, research and development, nutritionists, medical technology, pharmacy. How about those who are paying? The VA, the Medicare, Medicaid, the insurance companies. Of course, we'd say the employees, the employers, the agents. But who owns the industry? Who speaks for the industry? Oh, who said that? Dude, you know what happened? I built this slide, and I forgot this one up until I was like way long into it. I'm like, oh yeah, the person. The guy who's actually, it's his care, right? Thanks. Yeah, the customer. It should be. What happens when people all of a sudden, when it's free? They're totally separated from owning healthcare, right? But here's why I say this. Because thinking about how are we ever going to help some people who have some stupid, uneducated, uninformed ideas. And really, I don't think they're probably stupid, although let's say that there's some over on the far side maybe who are, and those are the ones we aren't even going to try to convince. Let's say there's a big chunk that are just ignorant to the way things are working right now. That if we had these conversations with them, they'd say, you know what? That actually makes sense. And they would start to come around and see what we're trying to do here, and aren't going to continue to push us down this other path. My conversation about we ought to sell the value of the entire healthcare industry comes back to this slide, because nobody is saying how fantastic this industry is doing, how great the advancements are, And if we were a consumer product, people would love to buy us. The government's the only entity saying, you know what? $2.2 trillion, if we had our hands around this whole thing, you know what? We could drive some efficiencies into that system because it's a completely inefficient system right now. And you and I think that's pretty arrogant to think in the level of trillions. But I think you have to admit that's kind of where the market is right now. If we don't start working to sell the value of us as an industry and sort of take on the whole picture, not just the stuff that's insured that we sell products for, man, we have a chance to start to speak as a group before the whole thing has a bucket around it and says the government just runs the whole thing. So anyhow, I hope that's a little bit helpful, at least trying to get out of our own seats a little bit, think from another viewpoint. We've got to keep each other connected and connected in on these conversations right now. The rest of the country is needing you guys speaking about this far more than we need to hear from the guys at the connector and in government and in DC. So I'm asking for you and your help to stay connected. With that, I will turn over the floor.